Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, yes, Davidson here again. So today we're finally getting around to finishing up the sheet metal work on the forge here. So what we need to do is, the framework's 3 foot square, but we have 1.5 inch angle iron, or maybe it's 1.25 inches, I don't remember. So we're not going to have full 36 inch wide here. We're going to have a little bit of a gap just so everything fits easy and gives us some room to play around. So I'm going to cut a sheet at 35 inches. It'll fit between the width of the forge, and then this sheet metal is 16 gauge, 2 foot by 4 foot. It will come out to past the middle of the forge there. So once we get our width cut, we're going to have to actually position this in there and then figure out where we need to cut a circle for the forge so that fits in, and then we'll essentially do the same thing for the back half of it with scraps that we've got left over, and go from there. So I'll go ahead and mark this out for 35 inches, cut it straight across, and then we'll get back to figuring out where the circle's going to be. Okay. Those oscillating tools do a very nice job in terms of leaving a very clean cut, being very easy to control, not really a burnt up edge. Good Lord, do they make a lot of noise, and they're slow. This has a carbide blade, so the dullness of the blade really isn't to blame, but it's just that style. An angle grinder would have been a lot faster, but it would have been obscenely noisy, sparks everywhere, all into my jacket and everything, which I have actually started a shirt on fire with an angle grinder. Just not a lot of fun. For heavy material, sure, but for sheet metal, no, that oscillating tool, even though it takes a while, that cut probably took over 10 minutes. It leaves a nice job. It's a very, very clean edge. Alright, so now, as you can see, this is got our brake drum forge in the way. So now we need to identify how to cut this circle out. And let's figure out how we're going to do that. Alright, so we got our circle traced out. Simply put it on top of the brake drum and then trace underneath it with a pencil. Spaced out pretty evenly. Again, since we have about 36 inches inside the angle iron, and I cut this to 35, I got plenty of room for slots to make sure that it's kind of centered up and it fits nicely when it's all said and done. So I'm going to go ahead and fire up the Dremel and cut out the circle, and we'll be right back. I got the little propane lantern for a little warmer because it's about 20 degrees out. It's pretty cold. But I love this weather because I can dress for Alright, that'll work. So all I'm left with is a couple squares here that are 6 inches by 11 and a half. This is all the material that I have from that original sheet. So I'm going to have to kind of cobble things together with scraps that I've got around. I don't know if I can maybe get some out of this. Not really. Yeah. So we'll figure something out, find some scraps that I got around here. I don't think I have any more 16 gauge, but that's fine. I don't need to be, it's not going to be bearing any significant load. This might make a skillet, honestly. Sit on that one. Okie dokie. So the forge was, like I mentioned, too high. So I zipped off a few inches from the legs, which actually made it a little too low because I didn't measure anything. So all I did was I put some 2x4s underneath and some 1x4s on top of those, and that gives me a really perfect height. So very happy with how that turned out in the end. So good to go there. So we'll cut those last couple pieces that we need, and then the tabletop will essentially be done, and we can tack weld it into place. And then at that point we have to start working on the hood, which is going to be a challenge. So that'll be a tough one. All right. my kitchen. Decided to do a full-scale mock-up of our forge hood here. This is an adaptation on a very old post, an anvil fire, which was an early blacksmithing forum. So this was called the Super Sucker Forge Hood. This is larger than the one that is depicted in that website. You can look it up online, but it's about a 12-inch square box approximately. Some of the features that I borrowed is the slant that you can see here. It's not fully taped up because I need to ultimately undo it to mock up the sheet metal. But the top is 16 inches and the bottom's 10, so there's a little bit of a lean forward on there intentionally to help just direct the draft. And then I've got this lip, 8-inch lip that comes out, and it'll help to again direct the smoke and vapors to go up the hood. The only part that I'm missing on here, because I ran out of cardboard, is the top, which is just a simple 16 by 20 square, or not square, but rectangle with the central 10-inch hole cut in there, which will accept the 10-inch tubing that I use for the exhaust on the hood in the garage. So the dimensions on this, sorry, I've got a splinter in my arm. The dimensions on this are 30 inches tall, 20 inches wide, and again at the bottom is 10 inches deep and 16 inches deep on top, and 8-inch flap. The opening is 14 inches square, so 14 by 14, and that's primarily based off of my brake drum. I figured out, the fire pot of the brake drum is only a couple inches, but you're going to have coal piled up, and a lot of that coal, more than just the 2 inches where the air is coming in, is starting smoking. So I figured I would be plenty generous to minimize smoke getting out into the shop. So I think this is a pretty good representation, and I think at this point all we got to do is mock this up out of, not mock up, but fabricate it out of sheet metal. So the plan is going to be making a Franken hood, if you will. So there is a local blacksmith and farrier supply store. They donated a bucket of scrap that they were otherwise just going to take to the scrapyard. They donated it to myself, and yeah, that's quite a bit of just random cuts of various gauges of sheet metal. Most of it, I think, is 18 gauge. If you prefer to make something like this, I'm a little bit more robust, but I think it'll be fine. The 90-degree facets here will be reinforced with angle iron, but yeah, for the most part, it's going to be a completely random sheet metal mock-up or fabrication again, where I've just got random bits and cuts of sheet metal from that scrap bin that will just be spot welded all throughout to make an enclosed structure. So we'll see how it goes. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, but this is a good start. It's always good to mock up something just with simple materials before you try and go for the whole thing, go for the gold and fabricate out of actual consumable material. That's what I do at work, so figured I'd do it here. Alright, let's get to it. Alrighty, so here's the mock-up in situ. You can see it very generously covers our forge. Set it back a little bit here. Against the back of the table. Yeah, so that covers us very, very well. Actually, this could honestly be quite a bit shorter considering the lean. So we'll figure that into our final plan. But yeah, I'm very, very happy with how that's looking. And then ducting that to this will be pretty straightforward. You can see this is actually sticking out a little too far, so I'll have to cut that back, but that's no issue at all. You just do that with tin snips. So what we're going to do at this point is take these different panels apart. We've got 4 panels here, lay them out, and then find sheet metal from my scrap bin here, and using tin snips, cut and make it fit to our panels. And then once we've got all those fit to place, tack weld them up, and then that's a given panel. And then when we get all 4 panels tack welded up, and then we'll use angle iron to make it structurally sound, and then we'll be pretty much good to go at that point. And this little hood right here will be a separate piece, and we'll probably do like a simple hinge, like a door hinge, to allow it to flop up or something maybe. I don't see myself ever needing to put it down, so we'll probably just leave it permanently like that. So without further ado, yeah, I have to apologize for the lighting. It's terrible in the shop at this point. I've got a floodlight behind the camera. I've got a floodlight way over there in the shop that came with the building, but there really isn't an awful lot of light here in this shop yet. There's an awful lot of electrical work that needs to be done, but that's not going to happen today. So anyhow, I'll quit blabbering on and let's get to work. Alright, well, since I got my elbow in the way, kind of dictate what's going on here. So I went ahead and skipped all the welding that pertained to the body of the fume hood. And the reason why is because it's ultimately the exact same footage that you already saw when I was just spot welding a little bit at a time the tabletop. And that gets kind of repetitive, redundant, etc. So I figured I'd spare you roughly 8 hours worth of sheet metal spot welding together. And the other challenge that presented itself was because of the frigid temps, I was not able to keep my camera running for very long at a time before I'd have to switch batteries, which I only have 2, because the batteries don't last very long at all in the frigid weather that I was dealing with when I was putting this thing together. But ultimately, we're just going to skip on ahead, and you can see the finished product. It's obviously a pretty unique build, so I'm not expecting that you guys are going to do a one-for-one scale reproduction of this in the exact same fashion as I'm doing. I invite you to explore your creativity and perhaps do it in a much faster way than I did. I'm really proud of how it turned out at the end of the day, but good Lord, it was a lot of work. It was 2 completely full days of welding. Literally my left hand, which I did all my welding with, it actually felt like tendonitis from my trigger finger, having squeezed this trigger on and off for hours on end for an entire weekend. So yeah, I don't plan on doing anything like this in the near future. But anyhow, we'll get back to wrapping things up here. Alright, well, here's the finished product. Really hope you like how it turned out. I certainly do. It's a beautiful and very unique piece, and simultaneously the single greatest welding project, fabrication project I've ever done. I've never attempted anything on this scale, even close. So yeah, it was a huge experience builder, especially with respect to sheet metal welding, which in this particular case was quite a challenge because the sheet metal was at the lower limit of what my welder can stick together reasonably well. And you know, the issue that shows up there is that you very easily burn a hole through that sheet metal, because even when you've got the voltage and amperage on my welder turned all the way down, if you hold the trigger for even 1 whole second, you'll burn a hole right through the sheet metal. So you literally have to just hold the trigger for about a half a second, move on, and repeat. So it was a huge work of discipline, and you know, trying to keep everything good timing and pay attention to the arc, and make sure that you didn't hold too long and jeopardize the sheet metal, because if you burn a hole through it, just takes a whole lot more work to fill that in. But anyhow, I really appreciate you guys watching. I hope you made it all the way through the video. Not my most exciting content, but I think the results kind of speak for themselves. It's well worth the effort. And if you're considering building your own forge, it gives you a really good opportunity to build some experience in the area of welding and fabrication and that kind of thing. And I hope this gives you some idea of some of the things that you can accomplish and what you can do with a brake drum forge. So appreciate you watching. I'd really appreciate it if you guys hit the like button and subscribe to my brand new channel here. And there's going to be obviously a whole lot of blacksmithing content coming up. So we will see you on the next video. Bye now.